Have you ever noticed that the worst feeling in the world isn't getting bad news? It's the waiting. It's the silence. It's the not knowing. You send a message to someone you care about, and they don't reply for hours. You finish a job interview, and they say, "We'll let you know." You go to the doctor for some test results, and they tell you to come back next week. And in that gap, that space between asking and answering, between hoping and finding out, something inside you starts to tighten. Your chest gets a little heavy. Your mind starts running in circles. You can't sit still, but you also can't focus on anything else. And here's the part that nobody really tells you. That feeling, that restless, heavy, can't stop checking your phone feeling, has a name. Or more accurately, it has a chemical: cortisol. And cortisol has one favorite food. It's not danger. It's not pain. It's ambiguity. The not knowing. The unclear. The undefined. And if you feel like you've been living in that space lately, this video is for you. Let me paint a picture and tell me if any of this sounds familiar. You wake up in the morning, and before your feet even touch the floor, your brain is already running through a list of things that aren't clear yet. Did your boss sound upset in that email yesterday? Or were they just being brief? Is your partner fine, or are they pulling away? Is the project you're working on actually going somewhere, or are you wasting your time? Are you okay, or are you just used to feeling this way? None of these things have answers yet. Some of them might never have clean answers. But your brain doesn't care about that. Your brain treats every single one of them like a tiny open wound that needs to be closed. And as long as they stay open, cortisol stays elevated, quietly, constantly, like a background hum you've stopped noticing, but that never actually stops. Now, to understand why this happens, we need to go back to something very basic about how your brain is wired. Thousands of years ago, when our ancestors were living in the wild, the most dangerous thing in the environment wasn't the tiger you could see. It was the rustling in the bushes that you couldn't explain. Was it the wind? Was it a snake? Was it nothing? Was it something about to kill you? Your brain couldn't afford to wait and find out calmly. So it did something brilliant. It developed a system that activates whenever there's uncertainty. It floods your body with cortisol, a chemical that says, "Wake up, be alert, something might be wrong." Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your focus narrows, your body prepares for action. This was incredibly useful when the threat was a predator hiding in tall grass. The problem is, your brain still runs this exact same program today, except the tall grass is now your email inbox. The predator hiding in the bushes is now a text message that just says, "Okay," with a period instead of an exclamation mark. And your brain, bless it, cannot tell the difference. Here's what makes this so tricky. Ambiguity has become the default texture of modern life. Think about it. When was the last time something in your life was truly completely clear? Your job probably has vague expectations that shift depending on who's asking. Your relationships might have unspoken rules that nobody sat down to define. Your plans for the future might feel more like a foggy direction than an actual path. Social media has made this worse in ways we don't fully appreciate. You post something and the feedback is ambiguous. Some people like it, some don't, some ignore it. Some watch your story but never respond to your messages. What does it all mean? Nothing, probably. But your brain doesn't process probably nothing. Your brain processes what if something. And every what if is a door that cortisol walks through. You know what's interesting? We rarely realize that we're living in this state of low-grade stress. It doesn't always feel like panic. It doesn't always feel like anxiety the way movies portray it. Sometimes it feels like restlessness. Like you can't relax even when everything seems fine on the outside. Like you pick up your phone, scroll for a few minutes, put it down, and then pick it up again 2 minutes later. Not because you're waiting for something specific, but because some part of your brain is scanning for information, for clarity, for something to close one of those open loops. Sometimes it feels like irritability. You snap at someone you love over something small, and later you wonder why. It wasn't about the dishes in the sink or the tone of their voice. It was because your nervous system was already running at full capacity, already stretched thin by all the little uncertainties you've been carrying all day without even naming them. And this is where it gets really interesting. When cortisol is high and clarity is low, We don't just sit still. We start chasing certainty in all the wrong places. We scroll through social media endlessly, not because it's enjoyable, but because our brain is searching for patterns, for something predictable, for something that makes sense. We ask our friends the same question 17 different ways, hoping one of the answers will finally make us feel settled. We replay conversations in our heads, analyzing every word, every pause, every emoji, trying to decode something that was probably never meant to be decoded. We overplan. We make lists, spreadsheets, schedules, backup plans for our backup plans. Not because we're organized people, but because the act of planning gives us a momentary hit of false clarity. And for a second, cortisol dips. But then the plan doesn't go perfectly, because life never goes according to plan, and the uncertainty comes rushing back in. There's another pattern that's even more subtle. Some of us don't chase clarity at all. We run from ambiguity by numbing ourselves. We eat not because we're hungry, but because chewing fills a silence. We binge watch shows not because they're amazing, but because following someone else's story gives our brain a break from the unfinished chapters of our own. We stay up way too late, scrolling or watching or doing anything that isn't lying in the dark with our own unresolved thoughts. Because the dark is where ambiguity lives loudest. When everything else is quiet, all the not knowing gets louder. And cortisol whispers, "You should figure this out. You should have an answer by now. Why don't you have an answer yet?" And here's the thing I really want you to hear. It's not your fault. You are not weak for feeling this way. You are not broken because you can't just stop worrying. You're running ancient software in a modern world, and that software was designed to keep you alive by treating the unknown as dangerous. That was a feature, not a bug. It saved your ancestors' lives. But the world has changed faster than your brain has adapted. We live in an era where ambiguity is everywhere, in our work, our relationships, our news feeds, our plans, even our sense of self. And cortisol doesn't know the difference between a tiger in the bushes and a text message that hasn't been answered in 6 hours. It just knows that something is unresolved. And unresolved means unsafe. And unsafe means stay alert. And staying alert, hour after hour, day after day, is exhausting. If this is resonating with you, I'd love for you to take a second and drop a comment below. Just tell me one area of your life where you feel like things are unclear right now. It could be your work, a relationship, your health, your future, anything. You don't have to give details. Just naming it can sometimes take a little bit of its power away. And if this video is making you feel seen, a like, or a share, would mean a lot. You never know who in your life might be quietly carrying the same weight. Now, let's talk about something that might surprise you. Sometimes, bad news feels better than no news. Have you ever experienced that? You've been waiting and worrying for days, and then you finally get the answer, and it's not even a good answer. But there's this strange wave of relief. That's because your brain would rather have a painful truth than an endless question. At least with bad news, cortisol can stand down. The threat has been identified. The body can begin to respond, to grieve, to adjust, to move. But with ambiguity, there is no response that feels complete. You can't grieve something you haven't lost yet. You can't celebrate something you haven't confirmed. You can't move on from something that hasn't ended. You're just stuck in the hallway, between doors, and cortisol keeps the lights on all night. This is why situationships are so emotionally draining. This is why working without clear feedback makes you want to quit, even if you actually love the work. This is why health scares that require waiting and watching can feel more agonizing than a diagnosis. It's not that certainty is always comfortable. It's that uncertainty is almost always corrosive. Slowly, quietly, in ways you don't notice until you're lying awake at 2 a.m., wondering why you feel so heavy when technically nothing bad has happened today. So what do we actually do about this? I'm not going to tell you to just relax or stop overthinking, because that advice has never helped anyone. And honestly, it kind of misses the point. The point isn't that you think too much. The point is that your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, seeking resolution in a world that rarely gives it cleanly. So instead of fighting your brain, let's work with it. Let's give it what it actually needs. And what it needs, more than answers, more than plans, more than control, is small, honest pockets of clarity. Here's what I mean. You might not be able to control whether someone texts you back, but you can decide when you check your phone. You can put it in another room for 30 minutes and tell yourself, right now, I am not available to the unknown. That's not avoidance. That's a boundary. And boundaries are one of the most powerful tools we have against cortisol because they take an open-ended situation and give it edges. Your brain loves edges. It loves knowing where something starts and where it stops. Even if the thing inside the boundary is still uncertain, the boundary itself is a form of clarity. You might not be able to control what your boss thinks of your work, but you can ask a direct question. Is there anything you'd like me to change? That question might feel vulnerable, but vulnerability, in this case, is just clarity in disguise. You're not being needy. You're being brave enough to close a loop that your cortisol has been running on for days. And most of the time, the answer is far less scary than the question your brain had constructed in the silence. You might not be able to figure out your entire life purpose this week, but you can write down the 3 things that matter most to you today. Not next year, not in 5 years, today. Maybe it's calling your mom. Maybe it's finishing that one task that's been hanging over your head. Maybe it's just going for a walk without your phone. When you give your brain a short, clear list, cortisol has something concrete to work with. It can shift from everything is uncertain to, okay, this is what's in front of me right now. And that shift, even if it's small, is everything. There's another thing that helps, and it's one of the most underrated tools for calming cortisol: routine. Not a rigid, punishing schedule, just a gentle rhythm. Waking up at roughly the same time, eating meals without multitasking, having a small evening ritual, a cup of tea, a few pages of a book, a few minutes of quiet. These things sound boring, and that's exactly why they work. Your brain craves predictability, the way your body craves water. When the outer world is chaotic and uncertain, a steady inner rhythm tells your nervous system, some things are safe, some things are known. Not everything is a question mark. And cortisol, for the first time all day, exhales. Now, I want to be honest with you. There's a deeper layer to this that we can't skip past. Some of the ambiguity in your life isn't going to go away. There will always be things you can't predict, people you can't read, futures you can't see. And the real work, the deep, quiet, brave work, is learning to sit with that. Not to resolve it, not to fix it, not to Google it until you find an answer that soothes you for 5 minutes, but to actually sit in the discomfort of not knowing and say to yourself, I don't have the answer right now, and that's okay. I am safe anyway. This is not easy. I want to be clear about that. This is one of the hardest things a human being can do, because every cell in your body is screaming that the unknown is dangerous, that you need to figure it out, that if you just think hard enough or scroll long enough or ask enough people, the fog will lift. But sometimes the fog doesn't lift on your schedule. And the most powerful thing you can do is learn to walk slowly through it instead of running in circles trying to make it disappear. This is where something beautiful starts to happen. When you stop demanding certainty from every corner of your life, you make room for something that certainty could never give you: presence. You start to notice that the cup of coffee in your hands is warm, that the light outside your window is doing something interesting, that the person sitting next to you is breathing quietly, and that's somehow enough. Cortisol wants you to live in the next moment, always scanning, always preparing, always bracing. But you are allowed to live in this one right here, where you are listening to these words, where you are breathing, where nothing needs to be resolved for you to be okay. I know this is hard. I know the pull towards certainty is almost gravitational. You check the news because maybe today there'll be something that makes the world make sense. You check your ex's social media because maybe there'll be a sign that tells you what happened. You ask your friend for the 5th time if they're really mad at you because maybe this time the answer will settle your chest. I've done all of these things, more times than I'd like to admit. And I can tell you that the clarity I was searching for never came from those places. It came from learning, slowly and imperfectly, to tolerate the silence, to let a question stay open without needing to slam it shut, to trust that I could handle not knowing. And that small act of trust, trusting yourself with uncertainty, might be the most cortisol lowering thing you ever do. Let me leave you with this thought. Your brain is not your enemy. Cortisol is not your enemy. They are both doing exactly what they were designed to do, keeping you alert, keeping you alive, keeping you scanning for threats in a world that throws 1,000 ambiguous signals at you every single day. The problem was never that you worry too much. The problem is that the world asks you to carry more uncertainty than any human was ever meant to carry alone. So you are allowed to set some of it down. You are allowed to say, I don't know, and I'm not going to figure it out tonight. You are allowed to close the laptop, put the phone away, and let the evening be just an evening. Not a problem to solve, not a mystery to decode. Just a quiet, ordinary evening where nothing needs to be certain for you to feel okay. If this video helped you feel a little less alone in your head, I would be so grateful if you'd subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for another person is to let them know that their overthinking isn't a flaw. It's just a brain doing its best in a world that doesn't come with instructions. And if nobody has told you lately, you're doing better than you think. You really are. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.